name is John Apolis. I live at 2227 McKinley Court. I've been attending meetings about the Fellow new school since it was in the design inception and expressed concerns about stormwater. During construction, water frequently came from your property onto mine. I was always told to be patient and that you would try to take care of me. The school district property was raised about 4 feet compared to mine, creating a funnel which water flows directly towards my house. The stormwater plan was neglected, and then in September of last year, a large storm event ruined my basement, damaged my garage, and after 2 or 3 years of water, my driveway is heaving. The last 3 years, I've gone through 3 sump pumps. Each should have lasted 15 years. A fix was tried in October, but it didn't fix the problem. On Christmas Day, another large rain event poured water down my driveway, and fortunately not into the house. Any rain event over about an inch comes into my yard. In March, a tree was removed, but the grading hasn't been improved. I'm not an engineer, but it seems to me that I'm the only one who knows that water goes downhill. And I'm downhill. Through all this, I've been exhorted to have patience. My patience is exhausted. I want to be a good neighbor, but the school district has been dismissive, arrogant, and misleading. I grew up in Western Oregon. It rains a lot there. We have a joke. Oregonians don't tan, we rust. Thunderstorms cause sleeplessness as I wait for my sump pump alarm to go off and I have to deal with a mess. So, how can this be handled? I'm tired of being dismissed. I'm tired of my emails being ignored. I'm tired of the arrogance when I see that it just won't work. And I'm tired of the misleading information that suggests that a resolution is forthcoming when it obviously we're 7 or 8 months out and it is not. I hope that answers and a fair resolution is forthcoming. But if I hear nothing, I will assume that that is not your wish and that your stance of dismissiveness and arrogance, and I will be forced to employ more litigious, which I don't want to do. Now, I believe I'm on sound legal ground because of an email that I had with one of the engineers. I asked him, quote, so I understand completely, you would say that the failure of this system at Fellows the night of the 5-inch rain was due to a restricted intake, that intake being above grade by 6 inches and no vegetation. And he replied, yes, and we also think that there may be significant amount of soil in the storm lines from sediment that came off the site during construction. So what do I want? I want a plan to fix the problem, one that I can agree with, and maybe one that's approved by someone who's outside of this disaster. I'd like a timeline of how compensation is going to be achieved. Right now, all I see is a bunch of people sitting in a circle pointing to the person on their right saying it's their problem as the buck is being passed. I'd like regular updates. I would like any and all contractors or people associated with the Fellows project to be excluded from any consideration of any future construction projects until this is resolved. And I'd like consideration.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Catherine Fromm.
I've been here a lot of times. I'm Catherine Fromm, recently returned from my home in California. I assumed, or I thought I was supposed to talk when the admissions thing came up. I have two things to talk about, but Mr. Exner talked at the public forum rather than on the item. So in the interest of time...
So just so you know, you can talk at each item too. So if you want to wait to hear the discussion...
Well, do you want me to just do it while I'm here?
It's up to you.
Okay, I'm going to do it while I'm here because that saves me and you jumping up and down. I believe our school system is very good, and it is good because of the children who go to school here. And I remind all of you that the university sets the standard for the school district, which is sometimes a little ignored. I don't believe physical plants are the key to our success. And I find it interesting that you have this proposal for an outlay of money, which is egregious from my way of thinking. I don't think it's going to take $81 million to renovate the high school. I think that was a high estimate so that you could show that 96 to 103 would be nice. I invite all of you, if you're so inclined, to put on a bond issue for that amount of money to have at it, because you will find very quickly that you're going to lose. I was around when there was a proposal to put the high school out at the middle school location under a previous regime. And I called it the Taj Mahal. There wasn't organized opposition, but Ralph Farrar said the silence was deafening. It got about 42% of the vote, which is about what you're going to get for your fancy proposal. When it comes to money, people in Ames can be sullen, they can be silent, they can be surly, and that is about what you're going to have. I note that there is no provision in this for a variety of renovation costs. In other words, what could you get for $30 million at the high school, $50 million, whatever? It's just, we're going to make it a really high number so we'll impress everybody that we need a new high school, because Ankeny had a new high school, and I'm not impressed with that at all. Now, I divide my time between here and California, and I like it. And I'm not likely to lead any opposition. I have better things to do in California than worry about the Ames School District, which seems to be okay. And our problems in California are serious, all right? But I find this to be egregious, and I would remind you that the standing of our high school, it doesn't have a lot to do with the building. It has a lot to do with the teachers and the children from families who would value education. All right, now I'm going to talk about the other school admission policy, simply to make sure that it's understood, since I know what the proposal is, I got it and read it, that you all know how important this is. I'm a California native. My grandparents sheltered people on their ranch. My uncle ran a bus station, like there were 50, in the barn. I don't know how many undocumented workers lived at a time. I go in and remind the people in Escondido of this all the time, because this is life in Escondido. I teach children every day. I teach them to read. I'm a volunteer at the school I went to, and I went to 5 schools in 8 years, because we had a huge influx after the war of military families to northern San Diego County. So I know this problem like I know my own name. And I don't have a lot of I want to note that there seemed to be some hesitation on the part of the board earlier in the year as to why this was necessary, and I wasn't here, but I, of course, would have been quickly here telling you just why it was necessary. I'm not sure about policies where the children are going to be interviewed by federal agencies and people are going to escort them, et cetera. I don't know about that. I'm not too, and I think Mr. Exner raised some concerns about that. I never ask a child whether they're documented. I end up knowing a little at the high school level because I give a scholarship for college. One girl I gave a scholarship to, who is undocumented, has a 4.0 at Berkeley, and had been invited to shadow a doctor at the University of California, San Francisco in the summer, because she's that smart. So this is a problem. that we may not see daily in Iowa. Well, you will in Denison and Perry and a few other places, maybe not quite as much in Ames, because our housing costs are too high. But it is something that has to be considered in this school district. And there may be other undocumented kids. Ironically, with all the political, I'll refrain myself, with all the nonsense about building a wall, immigration from Mexico and Central America has fallen, and we have a surge now in Asian illegal people. And I know how that happens because it's happening again in California, the Golden State. I can only invite you to please keep track of this problem fairly for the children. If it comes to that, it may not, but it's something I feel very strongly about because I grew up with the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll close the public forum and move on to our next item tonight, the discussion item, Edwards' use of technology.
Okay. We've been one of our goals, building goals this year. I'll introduce people here, but we've worked on technology. I'm Dave Peterson, principal at Edwards Elementary, and we have Austin Reedman, fourth grade teacher at Edwards. Kimber Becker is a kindergarten teacher at Edwards, and Michelle Mathias is our art teacher. And we share Michelle with Mitchell Elementary as well. All right, that'll work better. So we have various building goals. We have reading goal, we have math goal, but another goal that we have for our building has been to embrace the advent of the one-on-one computers and for the kids and use of technology. So this year, some of our professional development time that we've spent going over some key components of technology with Marissa Dahl from Heartland AEA. And we've talked about critical thinking and problem solving with our technology, communication, collaboration, creativity, and innovation. So what we want to kind of share are some of the things that the teachers have been working on this year as far as accessing that technology for kids and for communication with parents as well. So we'll be talking a lot about how we've used the one-on-one computers. We'll talk about Artsonia, Seesaw, Symbaloo, Google Classroom will be some of the things that we'll go on. So I'm going to pass this on to Michelle.
All right, so Artsonia, this is their logo, is an online art portfolio. And I spend a lot of time, me and some volunteers, photographing all of the students' artwork, and then it's uploaded to this Artsonia website, and it's there forever. That's what they say. And so far, we've done it for 3 years at Edwards. It's been really, really successful. Students love it. I see that families love it. And I was able to do it 1 year at Mitchell as I was the sole teacher there for 1 year. Next, we have a video that, if it will play, gives you a short description of Artsonia. I don't know how to make it sound. So you don't have to watch it. Really, it's just that students create art and I upload it or somebody uploads it and it's there forever. You can go to the next one. That's okay. We don't have to. Maybe try to push that thing in the corner.
All right.
Cool. All right. Like I said.
Working on my technology.
So there's some literacy and written components of it that I plan to implement in the future, where they can write an artist statement and tell us what they did about their artwork. There's a space where I can leave feedback and can do my grading from it, and that's a big part of how I use it. I put it up there so I don't have to carry home a pile of statues or something that doesn't work. So now it's online, and I can assess their learning and remember their work from that. Media permissions are considered that the district has set, so nobody's name is out there, and each student is represented only by a first name, and if parents don't get permission, it's not displayed at all. It's hidden, and it's only seen from my view. In the 3 years that I've done it, it's actually way more than that. It's almost $750, so that has been really awesome as a fundraiser that a lot of parents actually don't know about. So our small community at Edwards has gone on and learned about that. This is the website when you go to Artsonia, and in that search box you can search for your school or your student. And the next one, this is our Edwards homepage. We've got all sorts of really cool stuff about Edwards and a little description of me, and this is how you can see all the artwork. Here's some examples of our students' artwork. They're pretty cute. And then our last thing, I really love Artsonia. Students love it. I've got flyers if you want one as well. As Artsonia is a place you can buy stuff. This is a second grader's art piece, and you can put it on a bag. That's how the fundraiser comes in hand. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
All right, I think we're on to Seesaw.
All right. Seesaw is a digital portfolio that I know our entire kindergarten team uses, the first grade team has started to use, and I believe the second grade team uses as well. It's used as a way for students to upload their daily work or something special, and it sends out to our parents digitally. It comes on an app form, so parents get a live notification, and it gives them something more to talk about at home. Because, well, I teach kindergarten, and when they're 5 and 6 years old, and you get home at the end of the day and you ask them what their favorite part of their day was, more than likely you're going to hear, I don't know, or lunch, maybe recess. And they can't always remember what they did during the day. So this is a great communication tool. The parents get to see what we're working on, and it's been great because they get to comment back and forth with what's going on. As a teacher, I love Seesaw for all of these reasons. It helped foster a great environment for my parents to communicate back and forth about student work, so they always know what's going on in the classroom. It is an organized spot for these activities, as well as I know it's safe. No one is sharing that information. It also helps the kids learn how to use their technology appropriately. They learn how to comment and give feedback if taught. Now in kindergarten, we haven't quite gotten to that point where we can type out feedback for each other, but it's a goal, maybe next year. We haven't quite hit that yet. As well as it gives students the power to show what they're doing, and they are so proud of everything they do. This is just a few quick examples of things we can do with Seesaw. Each one of these is a link that we don't have to go through, but they can take a picture of their writing and they can read it to you. We can use our math manipulatives that don't get sent home. You don't get to see what we do in math if we're using hands-on tools, but they can use Seesaw to share out their thinking and really take that to the next level. We can share our science projects that maybe don't get shown, and they get to share their thinking again with that. So they get to dig a little bit deeper with each thing that we've uploaded on Seesaw. As a teacher, I also use it for assessment. I use it to quickly show the assessment, but I maybe don't have to pull kids to do that. They can go sit in a corner, say each sight word, for example, close or upload it, and then rejoin the class. So it doesn't have to take more instructional time for me to assess them. This was an example of a post that I had posted over spring break. It allowed my parents to continue the learning at home. So we weren't in session, but parents commented in on what the discussion was like with their student at home about plants and how they grow in different types of soil. It's been very interactive. I've had great feedback with parents, and the kids love it just as much. Again, just another example of some of the things we've done. So this was an example of a student, they researched an animal, and they used a different app digitally to input their information. It's kind of cute. You can see the inventive spelling. But with that, they were able to save that as a document onto their Chromebooks and upload it all on their own. I try really hard not to touch my students' computers at all and just verbally walk them through it. And they're getting very talented at age 5 and 6. They could probably show us all a little something. Parents, it allows me to see how my parents interact online. Have they seen the objects that have been uploaded? So if I upload a parent newsletter or an announcement, I can see who has seen it and who hasn't. So if something's really important and I notice that I have 4 parents who haven't seen it, I can then make that phone call or send them an email to make sure that they get the information.
All right, second grade teachers put a little piece to it also, and they're not here tonight. But second grade is kind of used, and this is something that's been used, I think, by many teachers over the last number of years, but Symbaloo. And it's a way to push out sites for different apps and things that teachers will have. It's kind of their platform for the kids to be able to access different websites. And it gives them shortcuts to the curriculum sites and different other kinds of connections. They also, in second grade, one of their communication pieces is that they use a classroom Facebook. And so they have their private Facebook page just for the parents, and they're invited only parents to join it. And that's a way that they can include pictures and videos of field trips, parties, student readers, and so on, so that the parents kind of have access to what's going on in the classroom and things that are happening on a daily basis. This is just a sample of the 3 different Facebooks and what they might have as far as pictures, and we've all seen Facebook, so it's pretty much what it is. They also have used, one of the things we learned actually from Marissa was My Storybook, and so this is just a sample of how they've used what they've learned from that professional learning to create the storybook on the Seesaw account.
So once again, I'm Austin Riedemann, and I'm a 4th grade teacher. And I also like to say that I'm humbled and honored to be a part of Ames District, and I thank you all for your role. I was tasked with talking about Google Classroom, and I use Google Classroom a lot in my classroom, but would also say that Google Classroom is one of many apps that Google provides that are very helpful. And it's kind of the medium, you can roll over, is that right? It's kind of the medium that connects all of those Google apps. So it seamlessly allows Google Docs to be used by multiple students. It promotes some collaboration. If you would share a Google Doc or Google Slideshow to multiple students, kind of like we've done here, we're using Google Slides. I can get into my classroom and assign 5 students the same Google Slide presentation, and so then they can instantly collaborate together and make a Google Slide show based off of one another's thinking. Not quite.
Not right.
Another thing that I like to use it for is linking videos and articles for students. A lot of the things that we see in our class are News ELA articles or other sites that have articles for us to read. And one of the best features is share this to your Google Classroom, so I can instantly assign an article for our students to read and then answer questions on, and then it bumps it back to the Google Classroom where they'll answer those questions, and I get a notification that they've done it, And then that also offers me an opportunity to provide instant feedback that comes back to the student quickly, instead of something where they handed it to me and I took it home over the weekend and I looked at it and I came back and I handed it to them. Well, if they wanted to see it, they could right away go home and log onto their computer at home and see, what's he thinking about? How can I align my thinking? And so that's another feature. There are a few teacher benefits and there are a few student benefits that I'm going to talk about. The teacher benefits are the ability to manage multiple classrooms. So I only teach one section, being in 4th grade. So I created a second section up there in the picture with a school board class. So then I would upload this group of people into that class, and then I'm managing that class separate from my other classes to really keep things straight and keep things organized. And then paperless assignments, it allows us to kind of save some time, some effort, and some papers, and see the things on the laptops that were provided, provide instant feedback, and then also promote those 21st century skills like collaboration in working simultaneously on projects, being teacher looking at the same thing, students looking at the same thing, and working together to come up with a product that we can all be a part of and be proud of.
Okay, so then kind of culminating all this is we've started about 3 years ago when we moved into the new building, a celebration of learning. It's kind of taking the old open house idea and trying to make that a little bit more meaningful. And so we usually try to do this in April, May, this year May, so that it's kind of towards the end of the school year, that really make it an opportunity for parents to come and actually see something that they've been learning through the year. And of course, a lot of the things that teachers were showing this time were technology-based. So just some pictures there of different things. Of course, the big highlight is the art show that Michelle puts on, and she spends hours putting up different art just for celebration of learning. And that's a big attractor to bring people in, and of course it's a PTO event, so we have other things that go along with that. But the one thing I think I noticed this last week we had it, is parents and families were moving continuously around the building. It wasn't just going to the classroom and then going to the cafeteria and wait for the basket raffle. They were busy all through the rooms, going to PE, art, music. We have all of our teachers involved in having something there. So that's kind of what we've done with technology, just a few highlights of things. I can't be more proud of these guys and the entire staff and how they've kind of embraced the one-on-one computing. My biggest worry at the beginning of the year was we're going to throw these computers in the hands of kids and not really have a plan. And so that was what we decided, is that we needed to kind of have a plan of action so that it was a success right out of the gate. Thanks.
Questions
Any
from the board?
questions?
One of the things that I really appreciate the presentation, you did a great job. In talking, this is probably more to the high school, middle school, but we're probably 4 years in now, 5 years in on the implementation of one-to-one. And I'm just kind of curious, talking to teachers, there's kind of a balance needs to be struck between focusing on technology versus the social interactions. I know it's fairly new for elementary, but how are you balancing that need of social interaction with students with technology in the classroom?
Do you want to answer that? Think you can? I'm going to give it a shot. Because he's got 4th grade, he might have more social.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I felt like was a huge benefit to the Google Classroom platform, where if they're collaborating on an assignment, they might be sitting in that same group, and I would have them together working on their project. So for instance, we just did a project on our regions, and we created those slideshows. Well, that's not, they're sitting at their own desk, absorbed into their own laptop. They're sitting next to one another. They're working on something that they can see on each other's laptop in real time. So when they make a change to it, it instantly changes on the other person's laptop as well, and they're talking through that, that kind of interaction. So it just gives them a medium to work on those collaborative skills together.
And in the primary level, you see a lot more, I'm able to give my students a choice. They don't have to do their assignments digitally, and they don't have to do them on paper, but they get to choose, which gives them a lot more power and ownership over their work. Now, there are some times when, no, this time we are going to do it on paper, and no, sometimes we are going to try it digitally so that we have the experience. But after we've gained those experiences, they get the choice, and that choice creates so much more interest and buy-in from the students that it's been really powerful.
Yeah. In the art room, we were given iPads, which has nothing to do with Artsonia, but they use them for research, and we just did a stop motion animation project. And so the project was creating art on the iPad, and that was very collaborative and very interactive. There was just a few buttons that they pushed that use technology, and now they're on YouTube. So it's pretty cool.
Any other questions?
Just an update, Dave.
Yeah.
Would you tell us how you feel about the improved ability of teachers to provide education now that you have your new building?
Oh, with the new building. Well, yeah, from the standpoint of the new building, yeah, if you talk about the technology in general, and this is our third year, so we're the oldest elementary in the district now. I like to say that. The biggest things, you know, we have the document cameras that we use, and the teachers have gradually, as we've gotten into the new building, that's something that's a daily, I mean, they're using that constantly. We were just doing some teacher interviews, and teachers that are interviewing are using that when they're in the classrooms to provide their lesson. We also have the access to the Apple TV, which provides opportunity to show the PowerPoint on the TV or through the projector on the screen. We're all wireless. We had some growing pains in the first year as far as that, but now the wireless is working really well. We have the Google with the Chromebooks. We have worked through some things with wireless there, and now that's working pretty consistently for us, and it'll be an ever-growing thing. Probably to me, the biggest thing is the microphones. Each teacher has a microphone that they use during the student day, and so when they speak to the whole class or to large groups or to gain attention, I learned this firsthand when I subbed for Michelle one day in art, probably 2 years ago, that I forgot to use it the first class, and then the second class I thought, hey, I should use that. And so I used that, and by golly, the attention I got from the kids was a lot better than the first class I had. So the microphone really makes a big difference as far as I told the kids when they first came in the very first year, is there's no excuse to ever ask your teacher or tell your teacher, I didn't hear you. You should be able to hear them with that microphone. So those are some of the aspects of the new building with the technology and stuff. And like I say, 3 years in, it's pretty much standard usage for these teachers 100% of the time. That was our goal, was to use that microphone 100% of the time. They do. Yep.
Anything else?
Yeah. Are any of your teachers or staff members using any of the technology for assistive technology? For example, audio books or speech to text, if they have difficulties with reading such?
Actually, yeah, we use it all the time. Specifically, the Snap and Read program that we all have on our Chromebooks, it allows the students to click and drag to highlight text, and it reads it to them. It has allowed my 5- and 6-year-olds that I teach to do research, to actually be able to research different things, to listen to what it says, and then we come back and we reflect on it as a class, and we discuss, and we use it that way, as well as any website that doesn't already have some of those tools for kindergarten age students. We use them there, but that specifically is phenomenal, as well as we use audiobooks every day in my literacy rotation.
Yeah, I've used speech to type with some writing things for my writing curriculum, and one thing that I've really liked as an assistive technology for learners that kind of need a second look at it. I have videotaped my lessons, and then I post them onto my Google Classroom, and so when I put it up there, they're able to click on that link and watch the video of me teaching that lesson again, and they can freeze time so that where normally I just keep going past something that they might not have caught, they can freeze me and back me up while I'm teaching a small group of students across the room. So it just gives them another look, another opportunity to see kind of something that they may have missed or want to go back and work through a problem while I'm talking about it and try to work through each step in a math problem or something like that. So that's been a huge benefit.
I'm sure some parents appreciate that too. They can go in and say, oh, what was that question? Okay, great.
Well, then you don't have to use Khan Academy if he does it himself.
All right, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you guys.
Wait.
Yeah. Anyone wishing to speak after this discussion? No? Okay. Move on to our next discussion item tonight, policy 501.1, mission of students. Tim and Rodney.
Well, we met bright and early. I think it was a 7 a.m. meeting about, a week and a half ago?
Sure.
Something like that. And we discussed several policies, but obviously this one was one of them. And it was our belief that sometimes simple is just the best way to go about it. We liked the language of the policy as written originally, but we understood the concerns that some people may not understand that they were included in that. So we tried to find language that didn't completely politicize the policy, that would address those concerns of those individuals and bring them into a recognized group within that policy. As far as the rules side of it goes, a lot of the proposed language was moved over to the rules. If it's necessary or not is kind of up for debate, or whether or not it's even something that should be part of this policy. I know I've had some concerns about that as well. So I guess right now, Tim and I just want your guys' feedback. We do have this on the agenda later tonight, should the board wish to continue with that to actually approve it. But it can also take a different course of action should that be the consensus.
Thoughts?
I'll get started. I'm pleased, actually, with where the policy and administrative rules have found themselves. From my original resolution, that's really what that was the intention of my resolution, was to really get something in our policies and in our rules that gave direction to our staff of what to do if any of these things happened, and more importantly, to send the message to our students and their families that they'll be safe and comfortable in our schools, and they ought not to be concerned. You know, one of the things I think we need to remember is that in these discussions somewhere, I've heard some people say, well, we don't have a lot of undocumented students in our district. That's not necessarily the concern. The concern is that, you may have a student who is that was born here and has a birth certificate, but they may have a mother or father or an aunt or uncle or a cousin that's either living with them or lives close or something that they're concerned about. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I think also in this discussion along the way, we've had some thoughts about, we need to be concerned about those in the community that hesitant even to enroll their students. And there's nothing we can do to fix that by putting something in policy, other than sending the strong message that says, you're welcome, you're going to be safe here. Because that message spreads through that community really, really fast. That if they know, no matter what community we're talking about, that there won't be concerns and they're going to be safe, they're going to be secure, we're going to take care of them, like Dr. Taylor said, then they're going to be willing to enroll their kids. Lastly, I'd like to say that some of the concerns that were brought up tonight, I feel confident that our attorneys that are going to be giving direction to the staff, as Dr. Taylor's talked about in the beginning of the year, that the staff's going to be prepared of what to do if, and that part of that's going to be is in communicating what those students' rights are going to be, and to be, cognizant of that as any authorities come to access our students or speak with them. I also am very, very aware that these communities are being trained and informed to have a plan as a family. What if there's a call from school? What to have prepared? What documents to have prepared? Who should they call? So that those things are happening in the communities throughout Iowa, throughout the government, throughout the country. As a matter of fact, I know of a program that the Dubuque Archdiocese is providing this information to families to help them put together a plan. So I'm confident that those students are going to be prepared with this work. We can tweak it down the road, but I would have no objections to moving forward with what the policy committee's finalized at its last meeting and voting on it tonight.
Real quick before we continue, I did want to just remind everybody, we are voting to approve the policy, not the rules piece of it. The rules piece of it is the procedural process that the administrative team takes to actually meet the expectation of the policy that we approve. I know Tim and I have already seen some things within the rules that we had requested that aren't currently with that. So again, I just want people to remember it's the policy that we're really here focused on. The rules piece is not something that the board necessarily has to give its approval to. It's just meeting our policy.
And those items that he just mentioned, that was in the rules piece. And well, let's go back to the policy. The bold paragraph that talks about that we're including resident, non-resident, immigrant, and non-immigrant, and defining those four items. The item that was called for in policy meeting was that there is a definition of all four of those in the rules, and that definition is not here. And so the rules are not actually ready for approval at this point because that is not meeting the recommendation coming out of policy. There's also a couple spots. Any sentence that says, it's in there twice, schools may not question immigrant students as to their legal status and may not demand their documentation. The only recommendation out of the policy committee was the word immigrant is not in that sentence. It makes it I made this point at the last meeting, and I will stand by that through the policy committee and hope that that passes. But I believe it's a stronger sentence if we say schools may not question students. We're not categorizing immigrant students. It's not a label. There are kids. I will back up what Director Rosser said. I don't know if we've had 1 kid or 0 kids or 50 kids that have lived inside our school district boundaries that have not come to our schools because of fear of that family. But if there's been 1 child and these rules get that kid through the grapevine, this gets out into the public information and it gets 1 kid to enroll or 1 family to enroll their kid, that doesn't make this political. It's not political in my eyes. Maybe it is in some other people's. And I know we've gotten emails that people think that we're trying to politicize something. If this terminology gets 1 more student to come to our buildings, it was worth it to me.
So I need a quick clarification on something you said, Director Briggs. So we're approving the policy, but you could essentially change the administrative rules without bringing it to
Right.
the
So
board? Can you clarify that for me?
The policies that we make outline the desired goal that the board has. The rules piece of it is the procedure that the administrative team is going to take in order to accomplish that. The admin team has complete purview over what those rules look like. They don't have to come before the board to make those changes, as long as they, changes within it, meet the desired outcome as established in policy. It was provided, in this particular instance, more because of a courtesy, because in the language that was proposed originally in the policy was moved over to the rules side of it.
So when we receive our list of policies, Dr. Taylor, we receive our policies as well as the
the rules,
administrative rules.
Right,
We are technically only approving the policies.
correct.
So then what is our, do we bring the administrative rules always to the board if they're going to be adjusted?
Just like in this particular policy here, the administrative rules in the original document or the original policy were quite scarce, actually. So the discussion that came from the board was, how about in the administrative rules, we make sure we identify what we do, and when I mean we, what our administrators do if law enforcement shows up. So much of the new stuff that is in black, that is in the administrative rules, is really our process and procedure, but now we have it documented so that people can see it. So in essence, Director Briggs is right. You are writing a board policy which you create, then the administrative team says, here's how we're going to enforce that particular rule. That doesn't mean that you can't offer advice or clarity relative to the administrative rules.
And I think that lines up well with our mission of this board, as we help set the policy and then hire the administrative team to execute on it. So I support it as proposed.
I had just a question on, at some point when we had been talking about it, the directories, we had 5 of our 7 schools were not publishing student directories. 2 were. Has there been communication with those 2? Because it does state in the administrative rules that those are public documents if they are publishing student directories.
They are public documents because they were printed this fall.
Yeah.
We will talk about that during a retreat, and our idea is not to print or have a printed copy or hard copy of the directory available. So that will be consistent across the buildings.
Other thoughts?
I
Well,
would just
could carry on.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say one more thing. I just thought it was much easier to read and clear the revisions for tonight. So thank you for all the work that you've been putting in on this.
Thank you.
I could carry on for quite a long time about this because I don't like the way it's been done. I don't like the language. And there's a U.S. Customs and Immigration policy that's been in place since October of 2011 that covers almost all of these issues. So what is it that's changed in the last couple of months? I've always wanted to define a problem before we try to solve it. And I see since about September or October, we've been trying to solve problems without defining them. This has been a shift on this board, and I don't like it. We're solving things without defining the problem. If we don't identify and define the problem, how do we know we're doing anything? How do we know we're getting anything right if we don't truly define the problem? So, I get a lot of contact about this because I've told everybody that's asked me, will I support a resolution? And my answer is no. The only resolutions I support are those silly little, we want more money from the Iowa Association of School Boards, because resolutions are a waste of time. So I get to be a target when I say that, and I've had lots and lots and lots of people contact me about this issue. No one has defined a problem. Now, they've given me some general stuff. When I say, well, why should we vote for a change in this policy? They say, well, people are scared to come to school. I say, who's scared to come to school? They say, well, somebody told me that somebody said that some counselor in the school said, we won't have enough counselors. And I said, well, who's somebody? They can't answer it. I say, which counselor? Let's identify the problem. Well, they just heard it. I've heard people say things like, well, you have to do it to make people feel good. I think policy is a poor place to make people feel good. I mean, why don't we make the children of criminals feel good? I mean, we got children of meth dealers out there that aren't coming to school that I know for a fact exist. Why aren't we worried about them just as worried about anybody else? See, so I don't like the way we're doing this. Now, all that being said, the only significant thing that anybody told me is they were worried about release of information to police. That's covered already. It's covered in 22.7 of the Iowa Code. Anybody that releases confidential school information to the police is subject to criminal charges. And I'll guarantee you they'll get fired. So I don't think we're going to have a lot of people releasing information from confidential student files. We're using the word immigrant very loosely. We're supposed to understand something about the word immigrant that's not contained in the definition. The rule on attending schools has been in existence since at least, boy, forgive me, I'm supposed to memorize these case names and dates, and it's just escaping me. But, you know, we're back in the early 1980s in California and Texas, and the courts said very clearly, you cannot penalize resident children. You can't keep them out of your school. If they're a resident, their citizenship is wholly irrelevant. That's been the law since the early 80s. Why are we today trying to make all these definitions? We're trying to make the definitions in part because we won't use the real words. In the case law, it says illegal entrance. It says illegal immigration. It doesn't say soft, nice stuff like undocumented and words that we're supposed to infer things from that aren't necessarily part of the definition. So, our admission policy as it stands is accurate and correct. Why are we changing an accurate and correct admission policy? Okay, so I don't like what we're doing. We're solving problems without defining problems. That being said, I am not going to vote against the policy. But I really think that we ought to rewrite it a little bit before we vote on it. The policy itself includes now an introductory line that says the district must provide students with a tuition-free education upon proof of residency. That's not exactly accurate. We have to enroll residents. Whether or not they're provided an education is a separate issue. We have to enroll them. The second thing, after the 5 criteria, it says it is the belief of the district. Districts don't believe anything. If we're going to talk about belief, it's individuals, it's administration, it's the school board, but a district doesn't believe anything. A district is incapable of belief. It is the belief of the district that all children admitted and enrolled, including resident, non-resident, immigrant, and non-immigrant, may claim the protection of the 14th Amendment. Well, folks, I've spent a lot of time defending constitutional rights, and I would imagine that I have more experience defending rights of the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment than everybody else in the room combined. And I can tell you that the way that is written is inappropriate. Because every person walking the soil in the United States, every person is entitled to the protections of the 14th Amendment. Why are we trying to reduce those protections? And why are we saying that we want to enforce a single clause in the 14th Amendment when the real issue is the Fourth Amendment. See, that's the Fourth Amendment's our real issue here. The question is, do we allow any law enforcement agency to come to the school without a warrant and take information? The issue is not the 14th Amendment, the issue is the Fourth Amendment. So, those are all my complaints. Of course, I have no problem with kids. I mean, I've been serving here for 8 years, giving time for kids. I don't care if they're immigrants. I don't care what color, what gender, genderless, it doesn't make any difference. But let's do this right. In the administrative rules, my complaint there is that we need to address, and I understand we can do this in the future because we don't vote on the rules, but we need to address whether or not our conduct with law enforcement should be universal to all law enforcement and distinguish between law enforcement and Department of Human Services. Now, I don't see any reason to differentiate between ICE, U.S. Marshals, Story County Deputy Sheriff, Iowa State University Police. Law enforcement's law enforcement. We need a uniform policy on law enforcement, and let's get that start by having this in the administrative rules. But let's put together a real policy on how we respond to law enforcement. Okay, to summarize, if this comes before the board for a vote tonight, I am not going to vote against it, but I don't think we're finished. Okay?
To your point, in all our other policy discussions, at some point when people were writing policy, that terminology, it is the belief of the district, was stuck in a bunch of other policies. We've eliminated it in 20 or 30 of them over the last 3 years. That shouldn't be there. You're right. That sentence should read something like all children admitted and enrolled in the district, including resident, non-resident, immigrant, non-immigrant, may claim protection, and finish the rest of the sentence there. That would be less words, making the point, and getting rid of your objection that a district can't have a belief. I agree. So we have been consistent in that, and that one got by somehow.
Other thoughts? Mike, anything?
You want me to follow that? Really? So what I would conclude from this is that there's obviously some perception that there's a problem out there, and I don't think that this makes it. I think it makes it better. It doesn't make it worse. This is, if nothing else, putting this language in here does no harm. It may not help, because there's legal precedent that says it's completely unnecessary, but we are where we are, and obviously this has bubbled to the surface for reasons outside of this room. So I don't have any objection to this, and I can go construction all day long. I can't go legal all day long. So if there are some nuggets in Bill's statements that bear further refinement, we can always roll this back and continue to tighten it up. But note to self, talk before Bill next time.
Other thoughts?
I'd just like to make a couple other thoughts. Well, first of all, the legal precedent really comes out of Plyler versus Doe in 1982. Just to clarify, that says that, a resident, regardless of their status, is afforded a public education. And also, let's remember that I believe, Dr. Taylor, the language that you first brought to us came from, wasn't that from the Iowa Association of School Boards?
Correct.
Yeah. So this was not something, again, I tried to give you credit for it, but he brought it from our association board. So they had the I think statement in there, and that's not necessarily a problem. But I would like to see us move forward. and have this vote tonight. We can, if necessary, tweak administrative rules later, mostly to send the message. We've been talking about this for, unfortunately, too long. The school district, such as Nevada, right next door, they've already dealt with this. Their superintendent sent out a letter to all families, very simply, that said, they're welcome. Here's why. 3 or 4 points. Went out to all families and made it very clear that, they're safe in our schools. So let's just move forward, send the message, and we can work out those particulars later if you want to take another crack at that. But I'd like to see a vote on the overall policy tonight. That'd be a good step forward, I think.
Any other discussion?
I just want
go
to,
ahead.
I just want to point out with the rules piece, my suggestion is that the safe, supportive school environment where it goes on as state records and access to students probably is more appropriate language to fall into the policy currently known as JO, student records. And that policy might need a little bit more review. It was last reviewed, I believe, 4 years ago.
Anything else? I'll close the board's discussion. Any people from the public want to speak? Yeah. If you could come up and state your name and address.
Name and address.
Sorry. Yeah, 2 things. First, you need to think that generally kids doesn't have a clue what their immigration status is. They don't know. They are kids. Second, if you want to do this right and make a change, how things have to be done, if you think it's necessary, some things, I agree with Talbot, what he's saying. I think that you have to contact a civil rights attorney and an immigration attorney and talk with them. If it's really necessary to change or not, if how things are right now, police, if it's your concern, can ask and speak with a student. But if you want, I think it's really nice what you want to do, but if you want to do a change, speak with the people that really know about this. And I think that you can contact a civil rights attorney and an immigration attorney, and then can help you saying, yes, it's necessary to change this because of this, or if what you have right now, it's okay. Thank you.
Can you say your name and address?
Yes, my name is Andrea Civils, and my address is 1910 Stevenson Drive, here in Ames, Iowa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? All right. Move on to our next item tonight. Board meeting schedule, 2017-18. Dr. Taylor.
This one was put together using the same format that we have historically, and I know when we met with board leadership to discuss this, there were a couple dates or months that usually are okay but created an issue this time, and that one of those months is January of 2018, obviously. And just for the audience and for everyone else, board meetings are generally held on the second and fourth Mondays of every month. So it's every 2 weeks. But obviously during the summer months, July, we have traditionally only had one board meeting. And then as you get to January of 2018, the second, the available date was going to fall on Martin Luther King's birthday. So we were moving it off of the 15th to the 22nd and only holding one board meeting during the month of January of 2018. Everything else is pretty consistent with what we've done in the past.
Any comments here? Again, we would ask to try to keep Mondays available for special meetings. We haven't had many here lately, but just an FYI. Any discussion from the public? All right, moving on to our next item is the Pebble update. Jerry.
Thank you. I have on here for discussion tonight, just some explanation and some background on the $1.34 cent PEPAL that requires voter approval every 10 years. On the board agenda form, then I've described the priorities that the school board through policy have indicated that we use the PEPAL funding for: safety, ADA, repair and remodel, capital improvements, energy economy, renewal and replacement, and then reserves. Some of the things that we do and have been able to use the PEPAL money or funding for is we've implemented a one-to-one computer technology program. Carl also oversees that, as well as technology equipment replacements, copier lease. Additionally, we were able to expend PEPAL funds for bus leasing, building rental over at Beloit. Then projects that we've been able to recently utilize PEPAL fundings include the high school stadium restrooms, concession stand. We replaced sousaphones with the high school. We built the Dotson roadway, which was required when we purchased the middle school site. We also funded the middle school traffic signal at Dotson and Mortensen. Annually, I keep in the budget HVAC equipment replacement to maintain our heating, ventilation, air conditioning equipment. I have planned in here 2 roof replacements for each of the new buildings, each at 22-year intervals, which gives us the best value for the life of the roof versus the life of the building. We're also expending money for concrete and asphalt paving replacement and repairs, doors, windows, ceilings, and floor replacements. And we've been able to contribute a certain amount of PEPAL to wrapping up some of the loose ends on the elementary school program, including the window shades in the classrooms. And then, although we have a great design team and we've implemented this construction project, we've got a great majority of all of the little loose ends completed with the project. But I'm going around and picking up some of the loose ends that weren't anticipated also. In addition to that, I have expenditures to be able to maintain and upgrade our vehicles and equipment. And typically, I like to be able to develop a program. I have a vehicle replacement cycle, and I've got a good rule of thumb is to go with a 7-year cycle, and I've got that stretched out to a certain degree to 9 years so that we can still get good value. And before the equipment starts really getting costly to maintain and repair, and still have some trade value, we try and turn that over. One of the advantages for our instance is we don't put a lot of miles on the vehicle as much as they age in time. And so I just thought I'd give a little bit of background on what the money is used for. There's actually 2 sources of PEPAL, the 33 cents and the $1.34. And the $1.34 is this one that we get voter approval on a 10-year basis. And that is calculates out to $3,370,000 approximately. With that money, total district-wide, we're going to, once we get the new maintenance building done and the land disposed of as far as Crawford, Edwards, and the maintenance facility, we'll be taking care of over 1 million square feet of building area. And there's 216 acres of site. That doesn't include the prairie that we don't use, but that's how much we care for. And so this funding goes towards our ability to be able to maintain and care for those types of quantities. I was just kind of trying to imagine what would we do if we didn't have that, just about 3.4 million a year, and how would we be able to maintain the district and the facilities, and that what would we have to sacrifice or what would have to be paid out of general fund. And big number items, the bus leasing is about $400,000 a year. With the new facility, we will forego the bus rental for the building rental. As far as technology goes, with the one-to-one program, we're probably in the neighborhood of about $500,000 a year to be able to implement that and keep that rolling. We've got $100,000, just under $100,000 for copier lease. We've got telecom services and telecom equipment. And then, like I said, with the projects that we're doing, this year we've got pavement replacement up at Northwood. We're doing stadium improvements out at the middle school. We're doing the expanded playground at Edwards so we can create some usable space for play area. I mean, I can go on and continue, but I'll forego that and be available to answer any questions.
I actually have a question for Dr. Taylor. So in our board document, it talks about that in 2007 it passed with an 84% approval rating. Is there a community group that, I'm sorry, I don't remember 2007. Is there a community group that gets behind that, or is that something that, obviously it'll be on the, assuming we approve this, it would be on the ballot at the same time as the school board elections?
Correct. So both of those go together.
Right.
And the reason that we're trying to go this fall is that if it would happen to fail, we've got one other chance before it expires on June of 2018. And I think Jerry covered it very well. A lot of people don't understand 1 million square feet of building, maintenance and upkeep of all of that, plus buying sousaphones for the high school band was also part of that. And you are correct that we will be starting with a resolution tonight, which is the first step in that process of leading towards putting that on the ballot for this fall. At that point, I know Kathy and I have talked a couple times about the next steps and trying to get it's actually the PR work that has to happen and notifying people so that they know that the PEPL is, as Jerry pointed out, extremely vital to the operation of this district. So,
What's a historic approval of this? Has it always been approved by the community?
it always has at a very high rate. And I think Director Franson mentioned the last one was approved by 84%. So that's pretty high. It's just that critical, I think, and most people understand that. And it's going to be our role between now and this fall to make sure that the rest of the public, or the public in general, will get out and support this for us. It's that critical.
And is it majority, or is it similar to a referendum that it's 60?
It is 60%.
You do, oh, she's saying no.
No, it is 50%.
It's 50% plus one.
50 plus 1, I'm sorry.
50 plus one,
Yeah.
okay.
Is one other point about the PEPL budget is that's one that we can have a cash balance, so we don't have to spend all the money each year. So we can accumulate or kind of start building up some ahead in order to anticipate a large expenditure. Because when we get out to 22 years to replace the roof over at Edwards Elementary School, once it's finally reached its life cycle, that's going to be $800,000 or $900,000. So with that, it gives us the ability to, to be able to plan and then project forward and have the money available.
Sure.
Dr. Taylor, do you know of districts that have not approved?
The only one that I'm aware of is one of the metro schools, which is Urbandale, but they did pass it eventually. It took them a little while to get it done. Most school districts pass it. And I think a real key is tying it with the board election, because people are coming out, and it really does help. The more people that you can get out to support it, the better off we're going to be. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any that where it's failed.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thanks, Jerry. Any comments from the public? Yeah.
Helen Pitch, 3300 Eisenhower Avenue. I just had one question. You said something about one-to-one technology. Is it just for the computers, or does it include the software as well for the?
Helen, use the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you're hard to hear.
So I was just asking about the one-to-one technology. Does that include just the computers, or is it including software when you're looking at budget?
Actually, the answer to that question is yes. Academic software that's used for academic purposes, word processing, things of that nature, cannot be paid for through PEPL.
Okay.
However, management software can. So a couple of years ago, we moved Infinite Campus out of general funds to PEPL to free up about $80,000 of general fund money and take it out of PEPL instead, because general fund pays for software and teachers and things like that. So you can, but it's very specific rules.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to comment? All right, moving on to our next item, 2016-17 proposed budget amendment. Chris.
Good evening. Each year, as you know, we set our budget about 15 months prior to the end of the fiscal year. So for fiscal year ending May of 2017, or I'm sorry, June 30th of 2017, we approved that budget in April of 2016. So you take your best guess or best information that you have at that time, given your revenues, and you place it in the correct procedures. But as you go through the budget, there are things that will happen during the course of the year that you didn't know about, or things that change that might affect that budget. So we have 4 different control areas that we publish, and if you are going to exceed any of one of those 4 areas, you need to do a budget amendment, which has to be adopted and filed with the county auditor by May 31st. I have, before you have a review of the expenditures. We do budget on all funds. I put the general fund there just for information, so you know of all our funds how much the general fund makes up. But the budget is based on all funds. This year, the amendment is a couple of things. The amendment to support services is mostly due to recoding of expenditures. In the past, we've had a lot of expenditures, especially with transportation, coded to instruction. So I've worked very hard the last 2 years to try to get those coded to support services, which is where instruction where transportation is coded. We've also in the PEPL and sales tax fund had technology that's been coded to construction. So I've been working really hard with Jerry and Carl to make sure that we're coding technology to support services, which is where technology should be coded. In addition, I didn't amend enough last year because of the TLC grant, and if you remember, we exceeded that support area by a little bit, so I'm also adjusting for that. So I'm recommending that we amend the support services by $3 million. And then the other category is actually called Other, and that is where our construction falls. And construction is always interesting to try to budget because it crosses fiscal years. A lot more of the Fellows and Sawyer projects ended up in fiscal year 17 than I thought. I thought they'd end up more in fiscal year 16, so those expenditures just moved years. And so I need to amend to accommodate that. And then just the other projects that we've added. We've got the demolition of Edwards, we've got the Sawyer Soffit. So we've added a bunch of projects in there. We've got the maintenance building going. I'm not sure how much of that's going to end up in fiscal year 17 versus fiscal year 18. A lot of it's weather dependent. So I'm recommending that we increase the other category by $5 million. The budget amendment does not affect revenues, and it does not expend taxes. I would anticipate that, just like last year, we will not exceed the original budget in total, but I have to make sure I have enough authority in each of the control areas. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just clarification. We are not changing the total expenditures, only classification of expenditures.
Well, we are, and I'm not decreasing the other categories, so we are increasing the budget authority, but I don't believe when all is said and done that we will expend more, unless we really go gangbusters on construction. I don't believe we'll end up exceeding the original budgeted amount. That's what happened last year. We exceeded in support services, but we were under in the total.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion from the public? All right, moving on. We are to committee reports. Any updates?
There was a TLC meeting.
I'm getting there, sorry.
Don't have the date, there it is, April 26th. Lot of discussions in that meeting. The K-2 reading pilot, we did get an update of that, some of the things that have happened. One item that happened that was brought forward at that time, this afternoon, 5:15, we had presentations from the 3 programs that have been piloted, streamed in here, and two of those will be available on the website within a day or two to view. One of the programs against their corporate policy to actually record or to use the visual of any of their slides that they used in their presentation, and so we won't be able to share that one with the public. But I think that is kind of irrelevant to the whole conversation. Coming up, something to warn board about and public about is that it's my guess that we will have to insert a board meeting somewhere between the 5th and the 19th to at least discuss, if not discuss and approve the pilot recommendations. Just simply because there's no way that the Iowa Reading Research Center can get the data compiled and back to us so we can make a decision for the June 5th meeting. But if we wait until the 19th and it gets tabled, there's no way that we're going to have the materials here to start next school year. And so something to warn everybody about somewhere in there. I'm guessing it'll be on that Monday the 12th, but that'll be something that'll have to be, you guys can set that date, I'll be here. We're going to have a special meeting or another meeting inserted in here to if that's the only item on the agenda. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be our only real option.
So you said there's a meeting before that, like at 5:30 on the 12th? Because here on the agenda, it shows the 12th as a special board meeting to discuss TLC. It's on the bottom of it anyway.
It's already on the, okay.
I think everything
It's not on
else-
our calendar as of now. It is not on the official published board calendar that we have, but if that's
Just at the
being,
end of the agenda.
Yeah.
Is that where you're looking?
Yeah, just at the bottom.
okay. Good, because that is something that we that was brought up in the TLC meeting that I think you speak, because I think you agreed, that there's just no way to get this done without holding a meeting somewhere between there. And so everybody if that's the date that gets picked, we need to A, publicize it so the public is aware, and B, make sure that at least 4 of us are here, but I'm hoping all 7.
And Dr. Deborah Reed from the Iowa Reading Research Center is going to, is going to be coming to help with that dissemination of information. And I think there's still question marks from our minutes, so we will get this all laid out for you so that you have it in printed form in terms of providing the opportunity of the word study team, our committee, and then also providing the opportunity for the board to have that. But as Director Rasmussen said, it is just such a quick timeline so that we can get this turned around and get those materials here for those teachers next fall.
Another item discussed in the TLC meeting was the cultural proficiency professional development plan that is being put together in conjunction with Dr. Spikes. They met, they had 2 options, and there was some talk of possibly looking at a hybrid of those 2 options, trying to combine them. See if it was thought that we could do that in order to not lose a year of data, during the year of data collection, that we're actually providing some professional development trying to move forward also. Because one of the plans had a full year of data collection before any professional development. The other one started some PD immediately and we, but kind of was a little more lacking on the data collection. So we're looking for a revision there to see if it's possible. I hope that comes back, that he can make that work. And you've seen the joys of the policy committee, and you'll see some more here in just a little bit, so no more update from that one.
I did want to update the board. Following our last meeting with the pool and the ACAC discussion, Dr. Taylor, Elise, and I met with the mayor, city manager, and the vice president and president of ACAC on April 28th. It was a really good discussion. I thought it was I told Elise a therapy session, and it would allowed us to talk about issues we've had to this point and then kind of where we go from here. So I thought it was a very fruitful discussion. The city, I believe, is going to be bringing back their feasibility study to move that forward tomorrow night, I believe. Again, a lot of good feedback. So continue to touch base. I did tell that group that I would like to have us, as they're moving their feasibility study forward, have the school board talk through option A and option B, and so we know where we're at whenever we decide to move. So we haven't had a formal discussion on the pool for a couple of years now, so it'd be good to update everybody on the costs, what the opportunities are, what the downfalls are for a current arrangement, and be ready to execute. Any questions on the pool front? Anything you two want to add?
You covered it well, thank you.
Will there be a conversation? You're saying if we're going to have formal discussion, are you envisioning at the next meeting?
I'm thinking within a month or two at most, and more of the summer, so June, July.
Next meeting or 2 or 3 or somewhere?
I'm thinking maybe even doing a special session.
Special session.
But
just as a-
we have that June 12th, so we don't want to throw too many in there. We'll talk through how we want to try to engage that, but
Okay.
sometimes I think it helps when we're not this formal of this table to have that discussion, but we'll talk.
Okay. Thank you.
Last Tuesday, the PEPL committee met, and we pretty standard fare in terms of projects and things that are happening, but we were just all reminded of how useful the PEPL dollars are, and if we didn't have them, what would we do without them? So it just reinforced bringing this resolution forward and asking the community for support.
Anything else?
Some stuff. Yep, the legislative roundup for so far, and the governor's still signing things as we go along, but some wins that we can be thankful for is that we did get that flexibility in categorical aids, specifically in rollover funds. So when there's funds left over, and for example, in a fund like 4-year-old kindergarten or dropout prevention funds and such, in those type of categorical areas, we can have some flexibility in moving those. The limited home rule, actually, Luke, you talked about this. Basically, what it does is gets rid of the old standard, no longer Dillon's rule. We're not limited to just what is allowed by state statute. It says that we're allowed to do certain things as long as they're not prohibited by state statute. So it kind of takes a little different spin on it. It specifically says other things like, we can't tax unless we're allowed to tax by state statute. That would be an example. Or we can't do something that's in the purview of a city municipal rule or ordinance. So it does give us a little more flexibility with some things. The repeal of the third grade retention, which I think is going to be a good thing. That a lot of us were concerned about that in a lot of different ways over time. The alignment with the assessment, that didn't get quite as bad as it could have turned up. In other words, they did leave with the Department of Education. They'll be given full authority to do a new proposal to bring in proposals for that, so that hopefully, I think they're intended. Dr. Ross, are they talking about not this coming year, but implementing it then the following year to be able to do that? 17, 18. So it's 1 year later than what they were originally planned. Two other things of note: school board elections will now be on municipal elections. They will not be separate starting in 2019. They'll be held in October instead of September. And then lastly, there was no movement forward on educational savings accounts, which I think for public schools in Iowa is a good thing. That's something that was put aside, and hopefully it doesn't come back up next session, although I'm fearful it is. But for public education in Iowa, I think it's going to create a lot of problems. So
with regard to limited home rule, does anybody know if the Iowa Education Association is going to tell us what that actually means?
That's.
I hope eventually they will, yeah.
Because I've read the statute and I have no idea what it means.
Yeah,
Well,
we
I
really
know
don't
it's
know
very
the
short.
boundaries yet. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah, the actual language is like a paragraph or maybe two. What it mostly said was what we can't you know, what specifically, you know, what it's really saying, from what I understood, and you're more the attorney than me, but gets rid of Dillon's rule and says which said at the time was, we can only do things that are allowed by state statute. Now, it says we can take action as long as it doesn't go against what's already in state statute. So it does give us that flexibility, but you're right. I think some clarification needs to be given to us on that. This is, you know, not a clear answer on it. But it's going in the right direction.
What makes me nervous is when they say limited home rule, Counselor, so that's where I don't know what the boundaries are yet.
Well, and the emphasis
soon find
on
out.
preemption.
Right.
My only other question was, with the school board moving, the date moving, for those of us that expire in 4 years, do we automatically just go another month or two, or how does it all?
From what I understand. And then also on that note, good question, instead of right now, in the past, we take office.
Did you know the Capital One Venture Card?
Wow, 3.5 years, and that's the first time I've done that.
Oh, no worries about it.
Des Moines Register article on third grade retention, if anybody wants to know what I was looking at.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Anyway, don't worry. What was your question?
So if my term expires in September, they don't elect until.
So right now, we get elected, and then the meeting after we take our seat, we will follow the same procedure that municipals do. So in other words, you'll get elected in October, but your term won't start until January.
Oh, so we're going.
Yeah, which the downside for us is that doesn't give us as school board members a whole lot of time to bone up on budget and get ready for the budget process. But that's the way it's going to be.
Okay. So maybe we should clarify, just make sure that, pardon me? I mean, that's September to January is a pretty long difference between a month, so I was just kind of, I'm fine, but.
Well, the election will be in in November, and then you won't take office. Oh, you mean?
But see, technically, like, my term is done in September, and so they're asking me to go till January.
As I understood,
Your
you'll
term
be.
was extended.
I think you've just been extended. Yeah.
Great. Other comments? Comments from the public? Yeah.
Angela Shaw, 1707 Deaf Avenue. I wanted to first of all say thank you for opening up the committee meetings to the public to be able to. So it was wonderful being able to be at the TLC portion of the meeting. But I just want to clarify that is there on the June 12th going to be a parent meeting where we will hear the results of those literacy reviews so that we can also hear before the vote will take place? I didn't hear if that was still going to occur between 5 and 6:15 on that day.
We're still, we're still.
That wasn't on the docket, just because we're running everything up, so the announcement would be made.
Yeah, come on over.
The announcement would be made at the public announcement would be made at the board meeting, Angela. So that's the game plan right now, instead of adding another meeting, because we'll be having the TLC meeting, which actually could serve as, am I remembering that right?
Should be a TLC meeting that
Yeah,
afternoon.
that's just what I was saying.
Which would be a public meeting.
Right. So
they
that could be
attend.
it could be the announcement to the public at TLC, and then the board meeting would follow almost immediately after.
Oh, okay, because I thought the TLC meeting was going to be from 1 to 3 o'clock or earlier in that day, which is not conducive for parents to be able to come out. So I thought it was going to be a later meeting at like 5 o'clock when parents could possibly be present, because then you're limiting the number of parents that could be present to hear the results and thus see what discussion is. So that was my only comment, that I just wanted to see if there was clarity about having that parent meeting so that all the parents can hear the
Thank you.
results as well.
We'll have some more discussions on it, obviously, since the board is still unaware,
And
so
some of
we'll
that-
tweak it. Thank you for the
And some of that
feedback.
will be bearing on Dr. Reed's schedule also, which we haven't, which we can't necessarily set, so.
Come on up. Catherine, if you could come. Sorry, people watch this.
I've said this before to some people privately. I know I have a loud voice, but some of you mumble, and it's hard to hear you. And half the time, I wasn't sure, of course I went out, but I wasn't sure where you are. You've got to talk to the public only because we're all sitting here, and we're not here for our health, you know. We're trying to follow the process. So I think some of you need to think about, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but you've got to talk clearly into the microphone.
Thank you. All right, to move on, next item, information, policies to announce. Rodney, Tim.
Okay, on the first one, support staff vacations and holidays. The only real changes made here was a change from the 4 hours per day language to 30 hours or more per week language. We currently don't have any employees that fall under that, and we thought it was an appropriate time to make a change in that language to meet the standard that the regular workforce meets currently. As far as other policies, most of these were food service issues that stemmed from the changes that came down. And the one at the very end is a brand new policy that resulted from that. If there's any questions about it, I'm sure Chris would be delighted to share her wisdom.
And those policies that he just referenced are the ones that we talked about at the last meeting that have to be approved by June 30th, Chris?
Yes, there was a requirement, we got notice in March or so that we had to have, all schools in Iowa had to have a policy on meal and in our case, snack charges because of the CACFP, and we had to have that adopted by June 30th. We had a policy that was embedded in what is going to be now 710.1 or what was EF. When I sent that to legal counsel said, no, it needs to be a separate policy. So I worked with legal counsel and they were working with ISB to get the new policy. We inserted what we had, so we're not really changing our meal policy, we just put it in a different one. However, then that started a cascading effect because when I took it out of EF, then EF had to be amended, and then we thought, well, we better look at the rules and make sure those weren't changing, and then on some of the other things with, then that affected some cross-references on the other. So really the impetus is 710.6, but then it caused changes in the others because of that.
Any other discussion? All right. Moving on to the consent, I'll take a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a question. I thought we were going with each policy down the line. We're not discussing each one? Okay.
These are for announcements.
I have a question on 710.6, just to clarify, because we scratched out the entire.
There should be no scratches on that policy. It's
No. Right, the scratches were in 710.1, okay, which referred to the fees and charges and all of that. And then that went to 710.6, where the meal snacks charges now reside, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. In the section that says payment of meals, and if we go down to the 7th paragraph, I would like to, in that 7th paragraph, and I'd like to recommend and suggest in that second sentence of that paragraph that we change it to read, elementary students who do not qualify for free meals will receive an reimbursable meal at no cost. In other words, strike the term alternative. It's policy that I know that a previous board did institute a few years back to take care of a fairly large amount of debt or charges that were left over in the funds. And I also am aware that there were a lot of stronger efforts made about getting kids signed up for free and reduced lunch. That procedure's been improved greatly, and I think the district does a lot better job of communicating with parents to get that done. But the fact of the matter is that the U.S. Department of Agriculture discourages the use of alternative meals and other stigmatizing practices in order to collect debts from parents. And I'd like to see the Ames Community School District get away from food shaming and not be doing that. I think there are a lot of other ways in which we can, by communicating with parents, letting them know. I think we do a great job right now with the emails that go out. I know I get them, when my son or daughter, are down to 10, 11 bucks or something, and I need to go in and put a couple more bucks in there, I do it. That works great. But for those that do get behind, $10 here, down to 25, and that's where it kicks in. At $25, if a student, parents owe more than that, then they get served the alternative meal. And it is different than what the other kids are getting. So, again, I think in a community such as ours, food shaming ought not to be happening. I think there's other things that we can do. And when we come back
What's
up for
the
this
term
vote,
that you keep referring to?
food shaming.
Shaming, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to interject here for just a second because I was part of this when they made this. And unless something has drastically changed and I am unaware of it, these meals are available to all students, should they choose that they want it instead of the other meal. We did that on purpose because the intent here is not to shame them. We are not required to provide them a meal when they have gone negative on their account unless they meet the expectation of free and reduced. This is an effort because we value the meal being given to the child because that helps them maintain their focus within the school day. Mm-hmm. We thought it was important that they have that. We didn't want to take away the meal because of a parent's inability to pay a bill. Mm-hmm. However, we had to do it within reason too. And the way that we got around not making this a stigma issue, because there's no intent to shame anybody here, was that any student could take that meal should they pick it. So it was available to everybody. It's not an attempt to shame, and I really would appreciate you not using that terminology. Thank you.
Well, the alternative meal is being used by other students. Chris, that was a state, that was again language that was provided to us?
I might add that federal law requires the alternative meal be a choice. Yes. So if we're offering an alternative meal, it has to be one of the choices, and we do have students who, whether they're qualified for free meals or whether they are paying for their meal or have money on their account, they do choose that meal. One of the requirements of the new policy that came down is that we were required to say at what point the negative balance will trigger some action on the school district. So ours had been $25. I did not change that. That was what we had put in a year before I came because of the audit comments we were getting. And then it says what the action is once an account reaches that negative $25. So only students who do not, a reimbursable meal is the regular meal. So if they're more than negative $25 and they get the reimbursable meal, there is no action for when their account becomes negative at whatever level you set as a board. But it is a requirement for us in this policy that the USDA has told us we have to say what that level is and what the action is. Right. So the action is at elementary, and it's an alternative meal, which is a choice to all students, whether it's breakfast or lunch. And at middle and high school, it is no meal unless they have money at the time of purchase. And that's been our policy since 2015.
And that's what I'm suggesting that we change it to, instead of it be that alternative meal, that it would be the refundable, the reimbursable meal. Because I can't imagine the difference in the cost between the two is that much. And also, I think I'll clarify here. I'm reading from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's document on page 38, and it says, actions that they discourage related to alternatives to singling out students. And it says discouraged actions, which is requiring students with unpaid meal charges to use a different, oh, excuse me, wrong line. Having them use oh yeah, that's right. Requiring students with an unpaid meal charges to use a different, or to pick up an alternative meal. They're saying that that's something that's discouraged. So it's not required. They're discouraging it in this document. And this document that I'm referring to is, give me a second here, get to the top of it, the Overcoming Unpaid Meal Challenges for School Districts. It's from their document dated 9/16/2016. So we are making this choice as a district. This is not something that's mandated. We can offer them a reimbursable lunch rather than the alternative meal. And that's what I'm saying I'd like to see the school district not do.
Are you asking for at the elementary level, at all three levels? What are you asking for?
Right now, it's just in relation to elementary. There is no reference to the middle or high school. We can get to that discussion later if you'd like. But definitely, I don't think we should be having children from the age, kindergarten to 5th grade be responsible because mom and dad can't afford to pay their bill necessarily on time. And again, I think we're very effective in collecting that. And I think there's other ways. In addition, there are other opportunities for us to cover these costs. There's charitable organizations, there's grants that we can go after that can help us cover these costs that are end up at the end of the year. There's philanthropic opportunities in the local community. I know in some communities, people have, just said, hey, let me help out. And they covered whatever cost were left in a particular elementary schools for that year. So again, I think we have other choices. And in a community such as ours, that we ought not to be using this mechanism to get parents to pay for their children's lunches.
As you'll note in the packet, it was asked during policy meeting, since the rules are not in this, we have to get this policy approved by June 30th. The rules are not in this, that this was something that policy committee did address, that we would be discussing exactly what you're talking about. I'd appreciate it if you'd forward the link to whatever you're reading there to Director Briggs and I, and we'll take that under advisement and we make revision or no revision to bring forward for everybody else's vote.
We'll run it by legal counsel one more time also.
That'd be great.
All right, moving on to consent. Take a motion.
Move approval of consent items as listed.
Second.
Moved by Franson, second by Rosser. Discussion.
We have minutes of the regular meeting held April 24th. The personnel report, of course, is here, and of note is the resignation retirement of Ms. Kathy Hansen as our Director of Media and Public Relations. I think her husband is also retiring this year, so thank you, Kathy, for your years of service, and I know you and your husband will probably be traveling and taking care of those grandkids, my best bet. We also have gifts to the district, which include 3 gifts for cash for the demo of the old Edwards building, $2,500 from David Kaiser, cash in the amount of $1,000 from Joe Merchant, and $50 from Angela Stanbridge. We also have 2 cash gifts, one from Peter Godlewski for $50 and $25, and an anonymous gift for the lunch program paydown, and also a white oak tree from the Ames Education Foundation to the district, which will be planted near the Hoggett School. We also have 4 contracts up for consent tonight, including 2 that are for student placement for student teachers, one from Grandview College and another one from Luther. Grandview usually sends us their nursing students. We also have the Chartwell's contract extension and Imagine Learning computer program pilot from Jonas in our ALP program. There are also a few continuous open enrollment applications.
I thought maybe it would be helpful to, maybe at the next meeting, is to update the board on the total amount we've received from the Edwards fundraising efforts. I talked to Joel last week, and they're still making progress. So the city is, I think, approving a proclamation tomorrow to confirm their intent to buy it from us for $1. Any other comments? Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 17.
I move the board approve the policies as presented.
Second.
Moved by Briggs, second by Rasmussen. Discussion. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 18.
I move the board approve policy 501.1, admission of students, with the following revision. The paragraph after point 5 to read, all children admitted enrolled in the district, including resident, non-resident, immigrant, and non-immigrant, may claim protection by the 14th Amendment of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Briggs. Discussion.
Can you read that again?
The only change is getting rid of it is the belief of the district that all children admitted enrolled. Instead, it says all children admitted enrolled in the district, including, and then the rest of it is exactly as written in your packet.
Okay.
Is that good enough?
Yep, that clarifies it. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Director Roser.
Yeah, it's just striking out the first 8 words.
And then, yeah, reordering the rest of them.
Any further discussion? Proceed to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 19.
I move the board approve the new open enrollment applications as presented.
Second.
Moved by Franson, second by Rasmussen. Discussion. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 20.
I move approval and adoption of the new world languages curriculum as well as the instructional materials as listed.
Second.
Moved by Franson, second by Rasmussen. Discussion.
You saw these, what was it?
October.
October? That's what it, okay.
Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 21.
I move the board approve the collective bargaining agreement with the Public Professional and Maintenance Employees, PPME, Union Local 2003, effective for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 school years.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Briggs. Discussion. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 22.
I move the board approve the reappointment of district secretaries and media technologists on the attached list for the 2017-2018 school year.
Second.
Moved by Briggs, second by Rosser. Discussion. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Item 23.
I move the resolution ordering election on the question of continuing a levy to voter-approved physical plant and equipment property tax.
Second.
Moved by Rosser, second by Rasmussen. Discussion.
I think we just saw the importance of this. It was detailed pretty eloquently by Jerry Peters, so.
All right, proceed to vote on roll call.
Rosser, aye.
Briggs, aye.
Rasmussen, aye.
Franzen, aye.
Deerdorf, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Passes 7-0. Item 24.
I move the board direct the board secretary to publish the proposed budget amendment and to set the date and time of the public hearing for May 22nd, 2017 at 6:30 PM.
Second.
Moved by Briggs, second by Rasmussen. Discussion. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. And item 25.
I move the board approve the final acceptance of the work for the electrical construction at Sawyer Elementary School project completed by All Pro Electrical Technology, Inc.
Second.
Moved by Esposito, second by Briggs. Discussion. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. Items from the board.
I have two things real quick. One, a clarification of some information I've just received, and we will get this in printed form. You're correct, there is at 5 o'clock a parent, this is in reference to the literacy materials. So what we are looking at, and now I've got to get to it, sorry. Here it is, that there will be a community meeting. What the staff is proposing is that there will be a community meeting that night at 5 o'clock to accommodate schedules. Like I said, we will get this out. This is kind of happening in real time. So we will have a TLC meeting that afternoon, followed then by a community meeting prior to the board meeting that night. So, but we will get that out and publicize that. The other question, I just had a question for, in our personnel report, this is the time of year that we get the information on all the different things, and at the bottom, there's always the voluntary transfer information. Is there a point each year that we could say at this point, let's see it all together, because we see it little by little as we go, just to kind of see as our staff is transitioning and moving where they're all going?
We can provide you that. That's just a cut and paste. That'll work easy.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Taylor, you might be addressing this in comments from the staff, but at our board work session last Monday with regard to the high school options and scenarios. So, and I know we've had some discussion throughout the week, so you feel like you and Dwayne Reeves and team and Jerry have good direction from us to keep that moving?
I'm convinced of it, and I'm meeting with Dwayne Reeves this Thursday to get, actually, for about an hour, we're going to get it all put together and start to kick off on it.
Great. Thank you.
Couple of things. Some of the issues that come up lately are treated as if they're new. For example, it was requested that we consider diversity in hiring. We've been working really hard on that ever since I've been on the board, so more than 8 years. The problem is we don't have enough minority applicants. Dr. Taylor has tried to address that issue also by trying to recruit before we even have college graduates. So these are things we're working hard on. Attendance at committee meetings, they've always been open. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's good that we cycle back around on these things to remind the community that these things are underway, they are being done. The second thing is, I heard Kathy Hansen was resigning because I wasn't going to be available to sit beside her at the board meetings anymore. But boy, I'm going to miss you, Kathy. You took this post and changed it from something that was really kind of ordinary into a very professional and well-received presentation to the community. And your work will be missed.
Items from the staff.
Very quickly, there was a message that is going out about a Netflix movie called 13 Reasons Why that was sent to parents and staff, and Dr. Ross gave me this note this afternoon. Julie Bryant was on Trent Rice today at 1:15 talking about it, and an all-staff message is being shared actually with the board today, but this is a series called 13 Reasons Why that's released by Netflix, and it's based on a best-selling novel about a teenage girl's retrospective look at her reasons for committing suicide, and she had articulated her reasons in audio tapes, and that she sent out to 13 people. So That information has gone out to public and staff to bring everyone's attention to that issue. There's also good news coming from Mitchell Elementary School, the healthiest Ames, and it was really through the leadership of a couple of very popular people here in town, Ann Thompson, for instance, who was at Iowa State University, helped spearhead that. But the end result here was that Mitchell was the third of 5 elementary schools that have received safety helmets over the last 2 weeks, funded by the Story County Community Foundation, and we're trying to hit all of those particular buildings, and Healthiest Ames has been right on the forefront with that, and there were some new bicycle helmets that were handed out to about 40 third graders at Mitchell School last week. So
all the elementaries are done now.
perfect. Also, I think of note is in the information that was provided, the old Edwards neighborhood, there's a meeting that Jerry is actually going to be having on the 22nd or 23rd with the neighborhood there relative to the expectations and truck routes and a lot of the details associated with the demolition of that particular property over there. So that will be on the 22nd or 23rd. As far as Crawford is concerned, Jerry's very busy cleaning that one out, taking what we have left for a garage sale probably at the facilities building somewhere near the end of May. And I know Chris is working on completing the conveyance of property in both of those situations to get those ready to go. I did let the board know this past weekend that we did hire or have made the offer. The contract isn't signed yet for a new human relations director, and her name is Lisa Negus, and she is currently with Iowa State University as an employee and labor relations consultant but she has a very extensive background in human relations, including in the private sector, but she also served in human relations with the Des Moines Public Schools and also with the Denver, Colorado schools, where she, in her writing, provided multi-site leadership to principals in 18 schools and resolved complex employee relations issues, et cetera, which HR people do. So she has a very wide range of experience in HR and has come back to Iowa. She is an Iowa native and found a home at Iowa State, but is going to come and work for us. So we're really very, very pleased to have her. She'll be here tomorrow, actually, or on Wednesday, actually, for the board. We have a once-a-month luncheon for our staff here. It's kind of a get-together and talk-through session, but Lisa is going to be here on Wednesday to at least meet all of the staff that are here in this particular building. I think with that, what we have coming down the road, of course, is a graduate list. I think everybody needs to be aware that commencement is coming up on us very, very rapidly. The last day of classes are on June 1, and the last day of for teachers will be on June 5 for this particular year. So those are some of our updates.
Dr. Taylor, I don't know who identified this 13 reasons why thing within your staff first, but I'd appreciate it if behind the scenes you thank them for bringing this to attention. My boys and I were having dinner a couple weeks ago, and they started talking to me about this show, and it opened up a conversation between the four of us that was interesting and enlightening, and whoever brought this to the attention makes that possibility for other families, and I completely appreciate it. So thank that person or let me know who it is, and I'll thank them.
I think it was Dr. Ross. No, it was not. But it was circled up to you, but go ahead.
All right, take a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Franson. Discussion? Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 7-0. We're adjourned.